Hi, I'm Kyle Bleeker, the pastor of Friends Church in Tustin, and I'm glad you're checking out some of our online content today. Along with our in person gatherings, which are every Sunday at 10 a.m., we have a number of different ways to help people get connected to our community and discover what God, the Bible, and Jesus have to do with your life. So check out our website to learn more or send our team a message directly using one of the links so we can help you find your way. Thanks again for taking the time. Now, on to this week's message. So glad to be able to be with you here. We last week had the chance to be able to wrap up a series that we've been in since September, which is just called Upside Down Kingdom. And I want to be able to celebrate something with you real quick as we get started, and that is the fact that we actually had life groups that ran for 10 weeks long, right? So here's why I want to be able to celebrate that, okay? I don't know if anybody had perfect attendance besides Johnson and Kevin in our group, right? Did anybody else? Did you guys have? Okay, we had some perfect attendance, right? Which is very impressive, right? But I just want to say this, as a church, we've never done 10 weeks in a row before as a study. And that's such a neat thing where people were committed to what it looks like to connect and be able to hang out together. Some groups met less than that, and that's okay. But it's this intentionality that we have within our church of what it looks like to build relationship. And so that's something that I'm celebrating. Celebrate all the life group leaders and facilitators who took time, and everybody else who just decided that, hey, on a night when I could, or a morning when I could just chill, I actually took time to press in. And the amount of prayer, the amount of stories, the amount of connection that came out of that is really beautiful. And so excited about that. One of the things that we're doing today is that whenever we read the Bible, there's this kind of opportunity within our current life that we can read a section of the Bible or maybe a couple of verses and then just jump to a different place, maybe within the text or a different place within our life. And sometimes we aren't aware of where some of the scripture that we read and the teachings that Jesus gives us, how those things are connected to other things. And so we just did a whole long block of time on Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. Today, there's just a verse or two or three right after the Beatitudes that are so rich and so valuable that I would miss it if we didn't actually look and say, well, okay, that was the Beatitudes, this look at these phrases of blessing, and what comes right after that? What is the thing that Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, follows up that teaching on? And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. Matthew chapter 5. If you have a Bible, you can turn there. If you have a smartphone, you can find that as well. And we're going to read that and take a look just at what Jesus follows up this idea of blessed people with. And so I'm excited to be able to explore that a little bit with you. So one thing about our church as well that I just want to briefly highlight is the fact that right now as a church, we actually have 2 open positions within our church. Those positions are opportunities for us as a church that has been recently planted to be able to hire some people to come alongside what we're doing so that within our first year, we have the opportunity to grow, to kind of get ourselves deeply rooted within this city and within this context. So since Easter, we have had an open worship position, which is just part-time, right? And I've taken a lot of time to kind of draw up this job description for this worship position. It's part-time. It's not always easy to be able to get someone to come along part-time. And so the people that have been jumping up here and helping us out, they're often volunteers or they're like one-offs. Gavin has made an awesome commitment where he's like, hey, I will be here once a month for you guys, and we're so grateful for him. Louie and Caitlin and Eli and Matt and a guy named Joey, who you might remember, right? He came once. There's another guy named Frank who comes and plays the cajon. There's another guy named Ryan, another person named Nico, right? Are you starting to get the picture? It's a lot to juggle. I would love to not have to juggle all of that, but that's what it looks like. It's that right now, as a church, we don't have somebody who's holding that, and so we bring a lot of different people in. And I'm constantly working to kind of try and craft that worship position, job description, so that it rightly fits this church, and so that it can be something we can hire the right person on. And then we also have another position, which is like an associate or operations director role. And it's a full-time position. It's an opportunity for someone to come along, partner with me in leading this church and overseeing a bunch of the different elements that make this church happen. That position is also open. And I have to say, I have been over that job description 900 times because I'm constantly thinking about, okay, what does Friends Tustin need that I personally, or some of our other like key volunteers, or the staff that we have, that they can't provide. And I'm always working on that, like praying it through, asking like, God, what do we need to be? And here's the truth. This is where I'm going to. I would love for those positions to be filled. If you know somebody who might be a great fill for those spots, talk to me. I'd love to show you the job descriptions and go from there. But this is where I'm going. This is why I'm bringing it up at the beginning of this, is that a job description is really important. It's something that lets you know what your purpose is within kind of the context and setting of what you're doing. It calls you to a greater like participation. It's more than just a task list. It's kind of like the idea of why you exist and what you're supposed to be about. And it also helps you know whether or not you're really on point. And if you have some drift from your job description, then at certain points of review within the year, a person can come along and say, hey, this is what you were really hired for. Are we getting after those things? And so job description is important. They're not everything, but it's crucial to actually have some of that clarity on what you should be about. Well, the passage we're going to read today is a very, very simple look at what I think the Christian's job description is. Two very, very simple phrases given from Jesus, and they are identity statements. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. That's what we're going to be reading and looking at today. It's a job description. It takes what the Beatitudes are, which was this picture of kind of values and like markers of belonging and who actually is in the kingdom. And then this part, these couple verses where it says, and now what do you do with that? You're in the kingdom or you're figuring out what it looks like to be a part of this. What do you do with that? That's what we're looking at today. And so, Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 15, would love to read it with you right now. You can take a peek. And I just want to give credit where credit is due. I have a good friend who is another one of the pastors of the other campuses for Friends Church. His name is Aaron Opog. Some of you might know him. I am just going to say I stole a lot of this from him. He willingly shared it with me and gave it to me, but Aaron's been a campus pastor and really an evangelist for a long time, and he had so many great thoughts, and he was willing to say, like, hey, Kyle, run with this. And so I'm just stealing and sharing. So, okay? So here we go. Let's jump in. Matthew chapter 5. Pray with me really briefly. Dear God, thank you for the way that you teach us, not just through task lists, God, but through statements about our identity, through a picture of who we can be in the world. Thank you for that, God. Bless us, teach us today as we read. We pray this in your name. Amen. Matthew chapter 5 says this in verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. Two very simple statements. You are the salt of the earth, and then an explanation. You are the light of the world. That's what we're looking at today. And what I want to focus on first is just the idea of salt, okay? Salt, looks like this when it's in some of its raw form. Our identity as salt of the earth, when Jesus is stating that and giving us this image and picture, it means that we are the ones that do what salt does in life. Salt preserves life, it brings out the best, and it makes people thirsty for Jesus. Salt in the ancient world had all kinds of different uses. It was a cleaning product. It was a form of payment, if you can believe that. The Romans, their soldiers were actually paid in salt. So if you ever hear somebody say, oh, that person is worth their salt, right? Why? What does that mean in our current day and age? Well, back in the day, you were actually worth the payment that you received. And so salt is something that maybe we can all picture because of our little salt shakers, which I brought, here, this sea salt that we have at our house, Trader Joe's, right? In our house, you got to get the fine crystals. Don't get the big ones because the boys don't like that. But salt shaker, right? That's just a common thing. We get it. But the more you look into salt, the more you can realize that this thing is it's a necessity for life. Life on earth as it is, cannot exist or happen without salt. And that's because salt, which is usually made up of sodium and chloride, it is a necessity for your body to be able to function. If you don't have enough salt, then what happens is that your nerves don't fire in the same way. There's actually a condition for a lack of salt, which I am not a doctor, and so I'm not going to try and pronounce it. But it basically means that you end up getting to a point where your cells can't balance the amount of fluid that they're supposed to have. It means that your blood pressure can end up getting off. It affects you. You get cramps, and so many other things can happen. Nausea and dizziness, lack of clarity within your head. And guess what? Eventually, if you don't have enough salt, you die. Salt is so important. And salt also has this amazing property in the sense that it has the ability to inhibit the growth of microorganisms. Not so much within you, but if you were hearing Jesus for the very first time on the hill when he was teaching his sermon, you would immediately be thinking, as most of those people did, as fishermen, about what it would look like to catch fish and then to have to transport it, not in a freezer truck or in any cooler or anything like that, but to have to transfer it meant we need to salt this fish so it could get to market, it could be purchased, still very fresh, but then needs to be taken home and prepared. We don't understand catch of the day in the way that people back then did. Catch of the day meant, great, we can eat it right now. Catch of yesterday was just not the same thing. And so you have to understand, salt had a preserving agent to it that was really important. You might have heard a lot of this before, but salt actually creates an environment that is hostile for bacteria. Bacteria doesn't want to be around salt. And this past week, I did a little grocery shopping. On the 17th, I purchased some meat, okay? And I went and I looked at that meat on Thursday when I was going to cook some of it up, and I saw that 2 days after I had purchased some raw turkey, that guess what? It was already bad. I had already kicked past the days. I don't know if maybe I'd grabbed the wrong package or they had slipped me, something like that, but in 2 days' time, it was already past the date. But I had also that same day on the 17th bought some carne asada. And you know what? I looked at the date on the carne asada and I was like, oh, when's the carne? And it was like December 8th. I was like, what? How is it possible that the same food brought on, or same type of food bought on the similar day, one can last so much longer? Why? Because carne asada's salt content is way higher, right? So tasty, right? Like carne asada, right? It has this amazing, aroma and flavor, and it's seasoned. And guess what? The higher the salt content, the longer it lasts. And that played out within my kitchen this past week. And I threw the turkey away, much to my wife's happiness. So here's the deal, though. In our world, we have to look around and recognize that if we are called the salt of the earth, if we are the ones who have a preserving agent within us, that we have to recognize that our world is actually in a state where it is gradually breaking down. There is constant decay and just like a falling apartness that happens within life. And if you are alive, even within your own body, as you're, shedding cells or you're breaking down, there's different things that are happening. If you have life within you, then you can replenish that. But if you don't have life within you, then you begin to rot. You begin to decay. And so salt has this ability, even for something that doesn't have life in it, to be preserved, to be able to hang on, to actually hold its good inside of it. And so salt is something that when Jesus says you are the salt of the earth, he's pretty serious about the fact that we have the ability within a world that is unfortunately broken and is coming apart, we have the ability to extend its freshness, to preserve that which is good, to hold together that which might otherwise just be fading or falling apart. Christians preserve the earth, not just in terms of nature, but we preserve the people and the relationships. We also bring out the best. Salt has this ability actually to block the bitter taste receptors inside your mouth. So when you take a bite of something, normally if you salt it, it's a little bit bitter. Guess what happens? Your brain can't even tell that it's bitter. Your tongue doesn't tell you that it's bitter because the salt is blocking that. What does that mean for our world? You think that there's any bitter people out there in the world? You put a little Christian on them, right? Put a little bit of faith, and all of a sudden, some of that bitterness goes away, or it doesn't even have the ability to land in the way that it did before. Salt also enhances sweetness. So you might have a sweet treat sometime, maybe in the next little while, and somebody's put salt on it, and you're like, why? It's because salt, again, removes the bitterness, but it also causes the flavor receptors regarding sweetness on your tongue to pop. And so it's better when it has a little bit of salt in it. Salt also, interestingly enough, balances and harmonizes dishes. So if you have certain flavors that are pretty pungent or strong, there's actually a moderating effect that happens when you put salt into it. Think about our world. Does it need a little bit of moderation, maybe a little bit more balance or harmony in the ingredients that are coming up? This was 2,000 years ago that Jesus throws out this concept of salt. And here we are today with chemists and other people figuring things out. And what they're learning is that Jesus knew how to bring things together, the right recipe for a good life. And so we have the opportunity as Christians in the settings that we're in to bring out the best flavor and aroma within the people that we're around, within the settings, within the work that we do. There's so many people throughout history that because of their faith, whether it was in science or mathematics or within art, they brought out the best of life because they were committed to the King of life. And so we as people, we have the opportunity, like salt, which actually breaks down the proteins within meat and within vegetables and can cause them to be a little bit more tender. We have the ability to hopefully soften a hard world and make it a little bit more palatable for the people that live within it. And the last thing is that we have the ability to make people thirsty for Jesus. I love Cool Ranch Doritos, okay? Anybody else that you believe Cool Ranch Doritos are the best Dorito? Yes? Okay, thank you. Right? But Cool Ranch Doritos, have you ever had one? They've got, you can see the flavor on the chip, right? And I love to really dive in and eat a bunch of it. I get to a point where even though it's so great, it's not great in and of itself. I need some water. I need something to drink that I get thirsty because of the salt content on these chips. And that's not a bad thing. We as Christians should be out in the world, seasoned in all sorts of different places, loving God, loving others in such a way that if people have enough experience with us, they long for and thirst for the one that we know. His name is Jesus. And he is the one who can actually bring rest and comfort and blessing within people's lives that maybe at that point are either too dull or are too broken. And so that's what we have the opportunity to do. We make the world thirsty. And just in case you were wondering, a great way to maybe think about this today is to say that if Jesus were talking to us right now, maybe Jesus would say, you are the Gatorade of the earth. Gatorade has electrolytes. Salt, sodium, and chloride are electrolytes. It is the thing that allows an athlete who sweats and who runs hard, those that are really working, to actually be replenished. You are the Gatorade of the earth. You allow those that maybe have really strived hard to be refreshed and to get their body back into a place of balance and equilibrium. Think about what that can mean for the lives that we live, the places that we go, the people that we're going to interact with at our holidays here in the next little while. That's just the salt side, okay? But then there's the light side as well. So Jesus says, you are the light of the world. We are the ones who have the ability to shine a little bit of light. And the phrase that really comes together for this one is that we are the ones who illuminate the way and guide others home to Jesus. We're not a source of light ourselves, but we, like the moon, reflect the light of the sun and have the ability to have that light shine through us into a really dark world, a world that is struggling to be able to find their way, struggling to know what in the world to do and where to go. In the ancient world, sailors did not have GPS. What they had at the daytime was the location of the sun, and in the nighttime was the location of the stars. And through those little points of light, they were able to navigate great oceans, especially when they knew the stars. When they knew which ones were which, and they had names for them, then they were able to track and navigate all over the world. It's a beautiful picture of what we as Christians are meant to be. In a dark world, in a place where things are constantly moving and you can't actually just anchor and hold fast. The stars in the sky, they move and they rotate, but they don't go somewhere you can't trust. So we're to be like those stars that guide people through the darkness to enable them to find their way home. And we're also like the lighthouse when you actually get close to the shore, that we shine out and we illuminate the path so that people don't get crashed upon the rocks. That's what we get to do. Philippians 2, verse 14 through 16 just says this: do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault, in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run in labor in vain. A number of years ago, my wife and I we knew we were called to church planting, but we didn't know where. And so we spent a lot of time traveling to different cities around Orange County and doing prayer walks, opportunities where we would ultimately say, God, we're giving this weekend to you, whether it's Friday and Saturday or just a day. And we would go to cities and we would walk around and we would ultimately just say, God, is there any reason why we would be called here to this city? And one time we decided, well, hey, you know what would be a great idea? Let's go to Huntington Beach. Because who doesn't want to plant a church in Huntington Beach, right? Like, let's go to Huntington Beach and check it out, right? We'll stay overnight, and we'll pray, and we'll spend some time in the city to see if this is a place that God wants to call us. And that night, when I was in Huntington Beach, I had to go out to the grocery store just by myself, and I did. I went out, drove around for a little while, went to the grocery store, picked up a few things, was headed back to the little Airbnb that we were renting. And as I'm driving along in Huntington Beach, asking God, do you want us to be here in this city? Is this where you're calling us to? Somebody pulled up alongside of me in a car, and I was a little bit like surprised. And they were right next to me, and they went like this, right? Which is funny because we don't put windows down that way anymore, right? But he went like this, and I got the symbol, and so I rolled down my window, and he yells at me. He goes, "Turn on your lights." And I realized I was driving in the car, and I did not have my lights on. So busy looking around at the city and everything like that, I didn't have my own lights on in my car. I have to say this to all of us here, and we need to hear it very, very clearly. We, as Christians, are the light of the world, and yet many of us are driving along the paths that God has given us, and we do not have our lights on. It is a dark world out there. I can see if someone's not a Christian, why they might be cruising through at high speed and then they're shocked about the wreckage that ends up happening in their life because they've never known the light. But we are the light of the world. We are the ones who have the ability to flick it on and to be able to illuminate the path that's ahead of us, to see the obstacles or the turns or the different things that are in front of us. I'm really glad that guy yelled over to me, "Turn your lights on." I was sitting there, I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, all right, thank you, click. I turned it on. I'm also really glad that God didn't call us to Huntington Beach. He didn't. We didn't get that sense. But years later, when we were in the city of Tustin for a different experience, we did get a sense that Jesus was calling us here and calling us to this city along with all of you to turn our lights on, so that people who don't have the way home can find it. And so those who are struggling with darkness or who just need to grow, because think about it, life doesn't happen in this world without light shining. Things don't grow without that. And so we as people are simultaneously invited and kind of given this beautiful identity from God, where Jesus is telling us, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. But at the same time, he's also warning us about what it looks like if we don't live into this calling. So the part here where it says in Matthew 5 verse 13, we can show that verse. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. And then it says this in verse 14 and 15 about light. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. That probably got a laugh from the people when he said it. Because think about it. Every light that they had was basically a flame. So what would happen if you put a bowl over top of the light in your house? Yes, it would get dark, but also you could burn the house down, right? So neither do people light a lamp and put it in their bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. Salt and light are things that are at their best when they are shared, when they are out in the world, actually connecting, being applied, making things better and different through the way that they land. And so we have the opportunity to illuminate and also to guide and also to grow. But there's an interesting thing, and this is what I want to acknowledge from a place of great humility, is that there are many, many churches within America. Tons. You can drive through any city in the entire United States and you will be able to see different church buildings, right? But you got to think about some of those church buildings. Why is it that America is in such a tough spot right now? Why does it seem like maybe America is cramping, or that they have dizziness, or that they're struggling with the balance within their life? I think it's highly possible because even though we have many, many churches, unfortunately, those churches aren't getting the salt out into the world. They are a bunch of salt shakers, and we're so grateful for that, but they're not open. They're not actually doing that. People gather, but then they just stay. It's like the Dead Sea. Everything goes in, but nothing goes out. But eventually, if we're going to be what Jesus is telling us to be here, then guess what? We got to spread. We got to go. We got to be scattered. We've got to be out of the salt shaker. It's not a hard concept. You get it. But I'm putting it in front of you here because this is what we need to be reminded of, is that if there are many, many churches, but we're all just here, if we all just gather up, but then we go into this next week and we aren't willing to be salt and light, we miss it. And that is a very dangerous thing. That is something that Jesus acknowledges, not with condemnation, but just being aware of the fact that salt without saltiness has no value. It is worthless except for to be trampled upon. And light under a bowl has no purpose. It should not be hidden. It needs to be shining. So we as the church, what do we do with that, right? I hope you can feel the weight of it a little bit. I feel the weight of this. I am constantly reading through these scriptures and asking myself, am I salty, right? Funny question to ask myself. Am I light? Am I shining? And this is what I want to say for us as a church. We planted Friends Tustin 100% with the intention, with the call to be salt and light within the city of Tustin and within the surrounding city and town. And guess what? We are doing that. We are figuring out what it looks like to be engaged with this community. But we also have more to do. We have more to go. And so I'm putting out this in front of you, partly teaching this now because I want to give a little bit of a forecast. In January, we're going to be doing a number of things to help us as a community be trained on what it means to reach the world that is around us, to be salt and light within it. The reason why I want to do that is because I think that many of us could have grown up within the church. We could have grown up within the salt shaker, but we were never really taught or given instruction or maybe modeled for us what it looks like to actually share our faith in a compelling and wise way in a world that at this point in time is free, but is not necessarily open. And what do we do in a world that divides secular and sacred when we constantly feel like there's kind of this sense of like, hey, don't talk about religion? What do we do with that? Well, with wisdom, we find a way around it. With wisdom, we find ways to actually help people come to know who we are and what our God is like that isn't a blinding light right in somebody's face, right? And that isn't too much salt. Have you ever had a meal where you're like, oh, a little too much salt, right? No, just a little sprinkle. That's what you need, right, in your life. That's what the hope is for starting in January, is that we will do 21 days of prayer as a church, where we will focus on praying that we can be salty and light-bringing people. On top of that, we are going to go through a study with our groups, which is called Alpha, which is all about, it is a proven approach to learning about faith that not only gives believers confidence in terms of what they believe, because that's some of what the problem is we've lost our confidence. And so Alpha is a great way, and it's also an amazing invitation where you can invite somebody who isn't a Christian. They can bring all of their questions, bring all the things that they're wrestling with, and Alpha provides a setting for them to be able to explore that without condemnation, without like a bait and switch. So that's what we're pushing for. And then on top of that, we also have an initiative that we're going to try as a church. It's called He Calls You Friend. And it's just yard signs that literally say that phrase, He calls you friend. And then it says down below that, come and explore what that means. It has a little QR code with Friends Tustin on it. We're going to put those up in as many places as the city will allow us, right? And we're going to see, we're going fishing, right? And when we go fishing, I don't know how to fish all that well. I don't know how to fish in the city of Tustin, but I don't want my king who called me and called all of you to be fishers of men to someday stand before him and for him to say, Kyle, did you fish? And for me to say, I talked about nets, and I talked about lines, and I talked about bait, and I even have some really expensive reels, but no, I never threw my line in the water. We can't do that. Because otherwise we end up being those that are spoken about here that have no value. This is going to be a challenging statement, but hear me. If we keep doing this here, but we aren't actually being salt and light out there, this has no value. That is what Jesus is saying. Everything within the Beatitudes is this very gracious, humble picture of what it looks like to be a Christian. You do not have to be perfect. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to be some towering force. You can be meek, and you can be poor in spirit. You can be mourning. You can be in a spot of difficulty or challenge. You can be working towards peace or potentially even persecuted. And you are a part of the kingdom. And you still are called to be salt and light. Because guess what? Sometimes it is the humble things of this world, the broken things of this world, our willingness to be honest in a world that sometimes is very, very fake. Those are going to be the things that are the most compelling, the most flavorful, the most illuminating for other people who are trying to find their way. Not a bunch of perfect people, but a bunch of people in progress who know that they're going to point people to their King. And they're going to turn their lights on. And they're going to figure it out. The thing that I often think about is just a simple little acronym. I'm going to put it in front of you right after I ask you two questions. When it comes to salt, you got to have salt distinct. It can't lose its saltiness. If it gets too diluted, then it's a problem. And with light, it can't be hidden. So just a question for you to reflect on. 2, is there anything diluting your saltiness? Is there anything getting in the way of what you were called and meant to be? That's what that passage earlier was talking about. Among a crooked generation, live such good lives, right? So you can be a bright star. Is there anything blocking your light? Anything where your fear or your hesitancy gets in the way and you don't know, maybe you don't know how to share? That's what we're going to spend January and February and March really looking at and growing in as a community, is how can we get better at this? And hopefully, in these coming months, we will still be people who are inviting. We got some great stuff coming up. Friendsgiving. We've got cookie decorating. We've got a service every single weekend. Then we've got Christmas. These are opportunities, if you want to, just through curiosity, to be able to say to somebody in your life, hey, we're doing some stuff at this new church that I'm a part of. Would you want to, come with me and check it out? And if they say no, then you'd be like, okay, I'll get you next month, right? So I want to share this acronym with you real quick. It's interesting because the Beatitudes are all about who the people that are blessed, right? And this acronym is just the acronym BLESS. So those who are blessed, how do they bless others? And it looks like this. When we think about the world around us, how do we bless them? It begins with prayer. We pray and we say, God, who do you want me to have a relationship with? How can I press in? God, what are you doing in this world that I can already join? And then on top of that, we listen to the interests and needs of others around us. We stay curious. And in that, we don't come with a hard apologetic hammer, but instead we come with a question. We say to our neighbors, what do you believe? Or we say, what are you doing for Christmas? Or we say, hey, when did you get that new car, right? Like any of the questions, just open up conversation, because we have to build trust. In a low trust culture, which is what we have today, you have to build trust in a gradual way so that people get to a point where they're willing to talk to you about some of the maybe bigger or more close to their heart type of things. Number 3 is that you would eat and enjoy a meal with people. It's strange, but if you want to cross a threshold with somebody, invite them over for a meal. Have a neighbor over to your house. Have them sit down with you. Share a burrito with a coworker, right? It's a great way to bond and to have the opportunity to learn while you're doing something else. And do it in a way that you enjoy, right? Go out for food that you like, even if you don't like the person. Make sure you like the food, right? And then last 2, serve others. Look for ways to add good to someone's life. Sometimes I think we only think about serving as helping someone in need, but serving also can be adding good to someone's life. Maybe they've already got it all made in the shade, but you celebrate them on their birthday. You do something nice for them. You do something that enables them to know that they are cared for and loved. And then the last part, share about your life, about your faith. When you have listened and you actually have taken interest in the lives of other people, they will finally be open to the interest in Jesus. And that's when you get the chance to share. That's when you get the chance to point out to people, like, this is what's going on for me. This is how life has happened in my kind of process with Jesus. So the final question as Gavin and Louis come up here is simply this. Who is one person that you can bless in this next season? Who is someone that God might lay on your heart And if it feels like that person might be so far gone that it feels impossible, I just want you to know we are an impossible thing. We could have ended up in Huntington, but we didn't. I didn't have my lights on, so I had to come here so that we could all turn our lights on together. This is an impossible thing. This wasn't going a long time ago. A number of months ago, this church didn't exist. And I long to see more of the impossible happen. People who you might think are too far gone to see their lives transformed. People who you maybe, you think, they'll never be interested in the things of Jesus. That's why you begin with prayer. And we wait and see the kind of life transformation that our God can pull off. We're going to sing a last song just to be able to close. I invite you to stand to your feet and to continue to think on that question over the next number of months. Who is one person that you can bless? And what does it look like for you to go out into your city with the love, the salt, and the light of Jesus? Thanks.